What's up, guys, and one girl that is watching this video. So why am I holding DJI goggles? I am notorious for talking crap on DJI, especially the FPV system. Why am I here showing you this pair of goggles? What is the deal here? So everybody that has ever watched me fly FPV, they know that I like to fly analog because the latency is good. It's very low and it enables me to do what I like to do with FPV, which is fly extremely fast and low to the ground and do as many tricks and flippy floppies as possible, as sketchy or unsketchy as I possibly can. I have a certain flying style, and that has kind of lended its way towards analog for the longest time, and digital to me just had a little bit too much latency and didn't offer anything for me personally to make the switch. So for the people that are here to say, oh, he made the switch, look, I told you so, you can go ahead and put a thumbs down. I didn't make a switch, but I am introducing this into the arsenal of FPV for me. So if you want to hear why that is and you understand the term nuance, then you can stick around and listen to what I have to say. But if not, then DJI is great and you should buy it. I think analog's great too, but most people are going to be happier with this. So now, if you're ready to listen about some nuance and what I have to say about this and what applications I might use, let's start. So a few weeks ago, Kevin came down from North Carolina, aka Stinger Swarm, and he's recently switched to digital. He was like, dude, so many people I fly with fly digital. It's really a nightmare to fly with digital and analog at the same time because the digital stomps all over the analogs, and I just was having issues with that. So I just ended up switching to DJI, and it's much better for his application because he's flying with other people that are flying digital, and it just makes more sense. And honestly, I'll explain later, and you'll see later why it makes sense, especially if you're trying to do things and not fly super hardcore freestyle and just go out and explore. So he came down here and we were flying a spot together. We were taking turns, obviously, because digital and analog don't really play together that well. They do, but not as well as analog and analog or digital and digital. And I ended up flying his quad. After I had been flying analog all day, I put on his digital setup and went and flew around a spot that I know very well. And basically, long story short, I was able to go places that I wasn't able to go on analog. Well, technically I was able to go in those places, but it's not somewhere that I would have initially gone because the video was breaking up so bad that it just didn't really justify me going back there because it was kind of sketchy. So I would go there with analog and be like, oh, this is cool, what's this? And I'd check it out. And then I'd go back with analog and be like, oh, I can go in there, and I didn't even think to go back there because I would have never gone back there with analog. So it kind of opened up a new window, and that's what got me excited. It wasn't the fact that it was the best thing in the world and I'm going to switch immediately. It was the fact that I could go explore places that I thought I knew really well with analog and just find new gaps and new holes and just fly around and basically look at FPV from a whole new perspective. So let me talk about that perspective. So when you get into FPV, I know when I did in 2014, everyone has this notion that they're just going to go out and explore and fly as far as they want, and there's not going to be any reason that they're not going to have perfect video, and their control link's not going to break up, and they're going to fall out of the sky and lose a drone. All of these things are just not even on the radar of someone that doesn't know that much about FPV. However, when you get into it, you find out really quickly that you're very limited, especially on analog and 5.8 video, of what you can do. Long range is, for most people, 100 yards away because the video is sketchier than they want to go beyond that range. And then you start learning it a little bit more and you start understanding that breakup isn't that bad. But there's never really that notion that you're just going to go out and fly and explore, just because you don't explore the same way when you can't see as well and there's like little breakups. You're always constantly worried about what's between you and the drone, and you're not that worried about what's in front of you and what you're going to see. So for the most part, people that fly analog typically stay close, and they like to fly, then do tricks and do racing and do all these different obstacles and things that we typically do with drones that you see online. You typically see that because that's a type of flying that really caters to analog. You don't see a lot of like real slow cruising around, exploring and going through weird stuff and being really far away, just because that's not something that caters really well to analog. And I'll explain that and show that when we go out and fly some drones here in a minute, because I have two identical drones. One is on digital FPV and one is on analog FPV, and then I'll show you the differences of what you can do with one and what you can't do with another, and vice versa. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get out there and go fly these two drones. And one will be, here, I'll just show you them now. So these are two Apexes. One is on analog FPV. It weighs 605 grams with a battery and a GoPro. The other one is on digital FPV. It has an air unit in it. Yes, I know you can put a Vista in here and lose a little bit of weight, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to show you the difference of 30 grams is not going to make that big of a difference. But so this is 635, this is 605 with a battery and a GoPro. So we're going to go out and fly these, and I'll show you the applications for both. And then at the end of the video, I want to talk about my applications, what I plan on using these for, and then maybe even some modifications that I've done to my digital setup, because there has been some. I flew at stock for a minute, but you know, always got to change stuff. So let's go ahead and go outside and check it out. See what is what as far as digital and analog are concerned. All right. So here is the DJI quad. I'm gonna go ahead and take off, and we're gonna explore around here. We're unlocked. Are we recording? Yeah, we're recording. There we go. So this quad isn't as well tuned, just because it's got a little bit of extra butt weight. 30 grams is roughly in the back of the quad. But hey, I'm getting used to it. You see a little bit of bounce back there. So this is like typical, like what I would do with an analog quad flying around. You know, I'm just like ripping around, finding holes, hopping over stuff, getting a little close. Like learning the field of view and flying around is cool. You can still fly it pretty aggressively, as you can see. The DJI camera, from what I'm told, is the way to go if you're gonna fly DJI, just because it is 120 frames per second refresh rate, where the other guy, whatever, the Nebula that comes with the Cadex Vista and whatnot, is the one that apparently isn't as good. So if you want the best of the best, you want to chop fucking trees in half, then you want the DJI camera, either the air unit or the Vista combined with the DJI unit. So obviously it can fly pretty aggressively, right? Like I can go over here and do tricks and do whatever I want to do. And if I were in an open environment and I had like a hole to power loop or a tree to power loop or something like that, then sure, it's really easy to do the same things that you were doing on digital. Now, I mean on analog. Where this shines is, let me show you. So I can go all the way out here to the street, which I wouldn't go out here with analog just because you just don't. And I'm like navigating. See this scraggle right here? I can see that. I can navigate up here, check out over here, be like, oh look, those trees are all jacked up. And that's like super HD gangster trees. Like I can check this out. I might even be able to land on this sucker, or at least blow some sawdust off of it. Yeah, we can tap it, whatever. So that is something, obviously this range I wouldn't have on analog. But this is what I find digital, this is where digital shines for me, at least. Like, never ever would I think to do this with an analog quad. It's just not something I would ever be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go up in the trees right there and explore. Especially all these sweet gum trees that like grab your quad immediately and you'll never see the quad again because it gets stuck 80 feet up. Watch me get stuck right now. But you can see, like before I probably would have popped this gap on the top of here and gotten caught in that scraggle, but I can see it. I can see that this tree is sketchy. I'm gonna stay away from the sketchy tree. I'm gonna go up here and be like, oh, check this out. Whoa, you're just popping through little holes, like whatever. Full Nat Geo status. Where's David Attenborough when you need him? This is some serious exploration. I'm in a little bit of focus mode, but hey, I can still see really well. I'm at 50 megabits. I can just pop through trees. The dynamic range is amazing. This is what I find digital to excel at.
The range is amazing. Not having to deal with the breakup is one thing, but also being able to see and just explore. Like, I would never, ever just take a analog quad and cruise the tops of the trees. That's just not something that I would think to do. Just because you're gonna be breaking up, the dynamic range sucks, you fly into the sun, you're like, oh, I don't know where I am. Whoa, if I fly behind this tree, am I gonna lose video? So all of this stuff, it just makes flying more interesting in a different way rather than doing all kinds of flippy floppy tricks, which I still think analog has an advantage over as far as being able to do that stuff and be consistent about latency. And you know, I'll show you. You'll see a difference when I fly an analog quad here in a second. But just flying digital, this is fun to me. And this is, I can see a complete reason to have one versus the other. Like, I think if you're new to FPV, digital's the way to go, because you'll learn a lot more as far as being able to go and explore. You won't necessarily learn more. You'll have more fun. You'll probably crash and lose some quads because you don't understand the bubble of where good video or good reception for your radio control is. But at the same time, like, you're gonna have a lot more fun cruising around being able to see than you are being terrified out of your mind because analog video is breaking up. And it can still do a lot of the stuff that I do with a digital or with an analog quad, but there is this little bit of nuance as far as not having variable latency and not having as much latency that I find analog just has a little bit of an edge on that. But again, like I said, that is not all that, basically. Unless you fly like me and you intend on doing 1,000 flips a second, analog might be not for you. But digital is kind of expensive. I don't know. Whatever. Let's fly some analog and see what that's all about. Same quad, but with analog, all right? So, I don't know if you can tell, but the quad, I'm not like as confident in the video, but I am really confident in the way the quad flies and how much time I have to react. You can see the quad's a little snappier. And I feel like I have more time for error and the time to fix stuff. You see how I just messed up there and I fixed it at the last second? Like, I can get lower, I'm a little more confident in how low I am. A little faster. I'm actually, it's not even that it's faster, it's just I have a little bit more confidence. And I've been flying DJI pretty much exclusively for the last 2.5 weeks since I got my first quad. But it's just like, there's a little bit of a difference. Like that. See, I would have crashed 100%. I did crash. I even disarmed and rearmed. But I guess what I'm trying to get across is it's not the fact that it's, you know, better because it's faster. It's significantly faster in a way that I can fuck up and fix it. Where I don't have that kind of confidence with the digital system. But let me show you where the digital system really shines. So I'm gonna try to go to where I was earlier. I'm gonna try to go up. Oh God, can't see anything. I'm gonna try to do the exact lines that I did earlier. Well, maybe not because I can't see. But see, I can go here, but it's just not somewhere I would go. It's not somewhere I'd be like, oh yeah, check it out, bro. I'm gonna go fly up the street. Like, the video is real bad. Not trying to stay over there. So, as you saw, that was terrifying. And with the digital system, it wasn't even telling me. It wasn't even telling me that it was like, oh, you're gonna crash soon, or your video is gonna go away. So let me show you, like, trying to explore in the woods. Not good. Already can't see shit. The only time I get somewhere like real close and I'm like, well, I think I can manipulate through there, and now I'm stuck. Where can I go? Okay, I can go out here. I can go over here. But it's just like, it's not even fun. This is more stressful than it is fun. So you just don't do stuff like that. Flying at the tops of the trees, like, I'm really blown out and oversaturated because of the sunset. I'm a little terrified that if I'm flying into the sun, like, I can see, but it's just not that great. I go behind this tree, I start to lose video. The sun is like glaring all up on my stuff. I can't see anything. But when it comes to doing a flip a millimeter off the ground and reacting at the last possible second, I still think analog has an advantage. But again, like, not everybody flies like this. This is why I was super nuanced about what exactly I was saying when I said, am I gonna switch? Probably not. As far as doing this type of flying, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for me to like stop that type of flying when I can do what I can do with such confidence because of the lack of latency, even though in theory on paper it should be the same. So now that you've seen both of those, let's go talk about them.
Alright, so now that you've seen both back to back, you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about when I say one application is going to fit a certain type of people and the other application is going to fit most people. So I guess moral of the story is I'm going to use DJI for commercial applications. So going on jobs and flying for, you know, movie sets or car commercials or whatever I do, that music videos, whatever that you do where you're going out and flying commercially. So one reasoning, other than the fact that I'm a little bit more confident in the range of exploring things and the latency really isn't that big of a deal for that type of flying. The other thing is that you can run HDMI out of the DJI Mavic Smart Controller and give the producer, quote unquote, an HD outlook. So typically I hand people like a little analog screen, which is complete garbage, and they're like, what am I looking at? This is gonna look like crap. And I'm like, well, there's a GoPro on top of there. This is just what I'm seeing. And it doesn't really give the producer a good representation of what they're actually getting when the shot is actually happening. Where with the digital system, you run the DJI Smart Controller, the little Mavic Smart Controller, and then you can run HDMI out of that. It is kind of a cumbersome thing. You got to plug in the goggles, and I'll probably make a video on that because it's kind of cool. There are other people that have made plenty of videos on that, but I might make one specifically. But you can run it out HDMI into the what do they call that? The media village, or you can show someone directly what they're seeing in live shot. For live streaming, it works really well. So for those applications, digital just completely hands down works way better and covers a lot more bases. Now analog, as you saw, like, it fits a very niche market of someone that's like on the edge and trying to figure out the fastest and flippy floppies and getting low and pushing as much limits as possible. Now, are all people doing that? Probably not. Are most people eventually going to get there? Probably not. Not saying that I'm crazy and the best or whatever. All I'm saying is that that's a very niche market that I think you could learn 90% of the foundation on digital, and then eventually if you wanted to get there, or maybe the technology will change enough to where digital has zero latency and, you know, it just completely takes over analog. But all I'm here to do is basically say, look, I'm going to use DJI for this. It works really well, and it honestly has gotten me more psyched on flying FPV as just going out and flying for fun than I have been in many years, just because I use FPV as a social thing. I go out and fly with my buddies, and we usually have to go to a cool new place to be able to fly it the way that we want to fly it, and it's always like, hey, that place isn't cool enough to just go fly around, where, you know, DJI almost makes it like where you could just fly around and explore in a field and it would be fun. So to me, it kind of fills a lot of boxes that I just didn't even really consider when I was talking shit on it before, because I hadn't used it in a way to where it was, you know, useful for that either commercial application or just looking at it from a different perspective, which I think is where a lot of people fall short when they're comparing digital and analog. Is I look at analog as flying a certain way, and when people say, hey, digital is going to be better than analog, well, right now it's not as good for specific things, which is basically my flying style in a nutshell. but it also works really well for other things that it doesn't fill all the little niches. It works really well for a lot of applications, as I've just talked about. So again, for those people that are looking into DJI and want to get digital FPV or new to FPV, as much as it pains me to say, DJI is honestly, I think, going to be your best option if you can afford it. Now, analog, there are other options with smaller drones and just being able to plug and bind and fly. And also, there's another thing to deal with, flying with multiple pilots and going to races, which is a huge part of FPV, but I think people don't really understand is out there. Like, if you get into the FPV community and you want to go to a race, it's kind of hard to get a lot of people up in the air on the digital FPV at the moment. It's a lot easier to get up like 8 people for a race on analog, and I don't see digital races being a thing anytime in the near future. Yes, it can be done, but I think just the community is so formulated around analog that it's going to take a little while for everybody to adopt to a digital system. But at the same time, like, not a lot of people are going out right now with Corona, so you know, what are you going to do? You can fly by yourself and have great video and, you know, look around in the trees and explore, and maybe with another buddy and just have fun. Or, you know, when things turn around and start getting a little bit better and you want to go to an event and fly with other people, maybe by then the technology will have adjusted and gotten better, which you can probably bank on it being. But I think it's going to be a few years before we see digital completely take over as far as having zero latency to the point where I'll completely switch, and also being able to play friendly with multiple people in the air. So, with that being said, I hope this was an informative video, especially coming from me, considering all of the crap that I've talked recently in the last year or two about DJI. Again, like, the company, they make good products. They haven't really treated the FPV community that well in the past, and that's kind of why I have my reservations about them. Especially me, I've worked with them multiple times, and every time it's been kind of meh. So, again, like, who cares what my personal opinion is on the company, but you can see for yourself that it's a great system and it just works. And it works for a lot of people. It's going to work for way more people than I think analog will, as far as keeping someone in the hobby and keeping them interested, which is ultimately, at the end of the day, what you want. You don't want to spend a lot of money and then realize that it's not something that you want to be into because it's not as fun as you thought it was going to be, where DJI and the digital FPV system, at least, kind of makes you look at it in a different way and then be able to do what you originally thought you were going to be able to do, which is explore and kind of view the world from a different perspective. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to, give it a like, and if you haven't already and you're not here subscribed, just check it out, whatever. If you want, cool, no pressure. See you guys. Bye. I'm sorry if I